Uh, Certainly, from the leadership point of view, there have been a lot of problems. There has been a perceived culture of bullying. Management would argue that it wasn't there. The reality is that the staff believed it to be there, and that was important. Denying it was no good. They had to do something about it, and they didn't. Their communications with staff were not good. Their communications with the public were not good. They adopted the stance almost of, well, we've decided this, we're right, you're wrong, end of argument. And they almost cut people off who had a contrary view to them. So from that point of view, yes, it was. The care for the patients from the staff was good, which was very pleasing. But then I think those of us that have worked in the environment know that the hospital staff, wherever they are, whatever the circumstances, will always do their very best for the patient that's in front of them. But it was still very pleasing to get that as a good result. The worrying feature, and the really worrying feature, I think, is that some of the services, as far as safety was concerned, were regarded as inadequate. And under those circumstances, it's a poor situation. But they were struggling in some of the clinical services, and they hadn't managed to correct it.
So what do you think are the main reasons? Why do you think they didn't manage to correct it before the CQC report?
I think part of their problem was having centralised the services on one town. A lot of staff had to move from one town to the other or commute from one town to the other. Some of them, I know, found that impossible to do with family commitments. They couldn't leave early in the morning before the family left for school. They needed to be home fairly early in the evening, and they just could not fit the hours in, and they went elsewhere. Others decided they weren't going to move towns under any circumstances, and again, some of them sought employment elsewhere. So they were left with a bit of a staffing issue, and there is a national staffing issue as well, in that there are always lots of vacancies and not necessarily enough people to fill them. So the staff were running thin on the ground, and I think it was a miscalculation. And then they struggled to find enough staff to fill the gaps.
So you're obviously chairman of the Friends of the Eastbourne Hospital, and you've been involved with the hospital for a long time.
Yes.
What do you think needs to be done? Where do you think the hospital needs to go from here on?
Well, the chairman and the chief executive have both resigned. They're going through the recruitment process at the moment for a replacement chairman, followed shortly by a replacement chief executive. They have an acting chief executive and an acting chairman who have taken the CQC report to heart, and certainly they're beginning to make the right sort of progress, certainly in their communications. There are communications with people both within the hospital and outside have improved. There's still a long way to go, but one hopes that the new people coming in will take all that on board and develop it. There are a lot of priorities in that CQC which the incoming chairman and particularly the chief executive are going to have to deal with, and that's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take 2 to 3 years to overcome all that, but hopefully they will get there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously one of the major groups I see involved in this is Friends of the Eastbourne Hospital, the Trust, and the Save DGH campaign, which more than anything reflects how people feel. I mean, what do you think of the DGH's Save the DGH's campaigns for you? And
Save the DGH campaign started where it was first mooted that there would be centralisation of clinical services, and their ambition has always been to maintain those services in Eastbourne, and when they were moved, to bring them back. The unfortunate part of that is that the Save part of Save the DGH campaign, has started to be interpreted in some quarters as the hospital is going to close. And of course, it was never intended to close, and it won't close. There certainly will not be any plans to close a hospital of that nature in a town of this size, unless there was a much better alternative, which would probably be a fresh build between the two sites. And in the current economic climate, that is just not going to happen. So it's unfortunate. I admire their ambition and what they want to do, and emotionally I'd be very attached to it. I'm not sure how realistic it is. And certainly in the short term, the incoming chief exec and the incoming chairman will have a lot of other priorities to deal with, rather than looking at saying, should we be moving services back to Eastbourne? So there's a very long way to go if they are to achieve those ambitions.
Right, yes. So I guess my real final question would be, you told us where you want these hospitals to go, but where do you think the Friends of the Eastbourne's role is going to be continuing, as a charity in the group?
Well, our role is very simple. I see it as being very simple anyway.
Right.
Our job is to support the hospital. And that's to support the hospital and the services, the staff, patients and the visitors to the hospital, whatever form that hospital takes. We've always done that, we will always do that. We've had difficulties over the last few years in that we've had to try and steer a political neutral course between the management and the Save the DGH campaign. We are totally independent of management. They have no say in who we are, who our trustees are, or indeed what we do, as long as it doesn't interfere with their clinical activities. Where we work with them is to agree with them what they would like us to do, because we don't want to do something that is just not going to be acceptable to the hospital, because that would be a huge waste of charitable money. But we will be there. I said some time ago to people that the Friends will be there when this current management team have gone. In my view, the Friends will be there when the next management team have gone, and perhaps the team after that. They've been there for 65 years or more, and they'll be there for a very long time yet.